The final update for the DLC roadmap is finally out, and this one specifically focuses on the 3 survivors that came with Seekers of the Storm, but there are a few other changes as well. Timestamps below, but let's start with the survivors. First off, we have Seeker. You might know that she was previously one of the strongest survivors in Risk of Rain 2, however, she might actually be the strongest now. As threatened previously, they did add self-reviving to Seeker. On your 7th stack of Tranquility, you can now self-revive once a stage, and you thought Unstable Transmitter was broken. On top of that, it doesn't appear that you lose your stats from Tranquility once you die, and if you're playing multiplayer, you no longer have to hold your 7th stack, meaning you had to sit at 6 and then wait for the 7th so you could revive a teammate. Now you're able to do it any time past the 7th stack, once per stage. Various parts of her kit have also been touched. For example, Sojourn now does more damage, 500% per second, but now takes 25% of your HP per second. Spirit Punch now does 50% more damage on the 3rd hit per Tranquility stack, and some of her cooldowns have been reduced slightly. More importantly, she got 2 new alternate abilities, so do the other 2 survivors, Reprieve and Palm Blast. Reprieve is her alternate utility skill, and Palm Blast is an alternate special skill. I have a video on how to unlock both of these. The Sojourn one seems to be a little bit tricky for everybody. Let's talk about Reprieve first. Whereas Sojourn is slow and makes you take damage over time, losing speed as you lose HP, Reprieve gives you a little barrier once you start the ability, and your flight duration is determined by how much barrier you have. Hitting something, either the environment or a monster, or losing all of your barrier will cause the ability to end and create a cyclone that heals, and sucks in all the nearby enemies, making it easy to hit all of your AoE abilities that you have plenty of. This is a super fun alternative to Sojourn because it is 10 times faster and 10 times harder to control. You're gonna need the steering wheel for this one. You don't get the same amount of damage that you do with Sojourn, but it also feels a lot nicer to play on Eclipse, and you're 10 times faster, so you can move about the map so much better. The alternate special Palm Blast is a Kamehameha that you can charge up to do 400% to 700% damage and heals allies. It launches a sick giant palm, and that's just awesome. I don't know. The gimmick to this is that you gain Tranquility stacks by hitting multiple enemies or allies. Keep this in mind, you can't hit your allies with it. And every 3 enemies or allies you hit with it gives you a Tranquility stack. So if you hit 6, you get 2. With more Tranquility stacks, the palm does get way bigger and does 10 times more damage. Not literally 10 times, but it does a lot. 250% to be exact. Now, this ability sounds awesome and all until you realize you're probably never going to stack Tranquility again if you take this skill. It's very difficult to line up enemies like that unless you're intentionally doing it. And yes, the Reprieve Cyclone is a good combo to run with this, but trust me when I say the enemies are too spread out for this to really work that often. On top of that, Palm Blast is way worse than Meditate now because it does not have self-revive in its kit. Only Meditate does. So you lose out one of the strongest buffs to any survivor ever if you choose Palm Blast. But it is a giant palm. What more can you ask for? Talk to the hand. Next, let's talk about the False Sun. He got reworked a bit. He has animations now. He has cool effects on his club. He's just a cooler guy all around. In terms of gameplay, there's a lot going on though. First thing to mention is you can finally use your club and laser the Father with your Step of the Father, which is his dash ability, his default utility, whereas before you couldn't. Sadly, this means you can't cancel laser the Father with your dash. I could definitely see this killing me in the future. But the club change is awesome because you could just jump in the air and use your club to smash down. Oh, flawless. Which, speaking of the club, it got nerfed a bit. Just holding M1 down got buffed. It does 450% damage now, so it can proc bans. But the Charge Slam now only does 1000% damage and has a 1.0 proc coefficient instead of the 3.0 it used to have. However, if you ground slam while in the air and you have enough distance, it will increase to 1.5 proc coefficient. So I can't wait to see the quickscope videos. Lunar Spikes are now agile, meaning you can sprint while using them. Their damage is increased to 200%, and the animation and firing time was reduced so you could shoot them faster. Probably most importantly out of all the abilities getting changed is the alternate special Laser Burst. People were complaining about the fact it didn't pierce. Guess what? It pierces now. Also, this is a big thing I've always complained about. It didn't crit before, it can crit now. It's a good ability. It does 1250% damage and refills spikes by 50% instead of the previous 30%. So Laser the Father is now gone, just like my regular father. Long live Laser Burst. There was a slight nerf, but slight buff to the False Sun as well. His starting damage stat was decreased from 13 to 12, but scaling stat increased from 2 to 2.4. Basically what this means is after level 4, you do more damage. Also, this is very interesting because how stats work in Risk of Rain 2 and how things level up is typically according to your base stats. I think it's something like 20% of the base starting stat of every survivor and enemy, by the way, is how they scale and level up. This is the first time a survivor has not followed that trend. And it also makes prayer beads even better on the survivor. Now let's talk about his 2 alternate abilities, Lunar Stakes and Meridian's Will. They have unlocked challenges, but I have a video for that, so you can go check it out. It's really quick. But these 2 abilities are super broken, and I love them. First off, you have Lunar Stakes, which is a piercing, lightning-infused lunar stake that counts as 2 lunar spikes, meaning you only start out with 2 at the beginning of the game. How this works on enemies is you can hit them with the lunar stake. It applies 1 stack of Lunar Ruin and then targets them for a lightning strike. Yes, it actually targets and follows them. It's better than Runic Lens. And that lightning strike will apply another Lunar Ruin. The lightning strike does 150% damage and has a 6-meter range. And if you aim this at the ground when you're shooting enemies, you can apply 3 stacks and have 2 lightning strikes because the lightning strike procs when it hits an enemy enemy or the environment. So if you shoot at the ground, it'll spawn another one. So while on paper, because lunar spikes do 200% damage and you have 4, and lunar stakes does 300% damage plus the 150 you get from the lightning strike, and there's only 2 of them, so essentially you're doing 900% damage. With just the extra lightning strike and not factoring in ruin at all, it actually does 1200% damage. So lunar stakes is a must-have and broken. As for Meridian's Will, this is an alternate utility skill that allows you to teleport and pull in enemies around you. You do 150% damage, and for 4 seconds, you triple your growth's passive benefits: armor, attack speed, movement speed, and regeneration. Having more growth increases the duration of this. In terms of overall mobility, Step of the Brothers is definitely better, but the teleport is just more fun and makes your stats go absolutely crazy. Seriously, False Sun might be the best survivor right now just because of how much of an abomination he turns into with these abilities. Speaking of abominations, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Chef, or should I say Chef, because they finally turned the caps lock on for Chef. He is the primary reason for the survivor reworks. He was the one who needed the most rework. His primary is finally better now. Instead of having cleavers that cool down kind of like Artificer, you now have 3 stocks of cleaver, and you can hold down M1 to throw them all out and hold them there, doubling the damage on their return if you do so, or throw them out one at a time and they will auto return as it should have been in the first place. There is no more cooldown for this ability. It is whenever the cleavers return to you, you will have access to it again. Hallelujah. And one of the best things that they added for this ability is that if you hold the M1 down and keep your cleaver spinning, any enemy that walks over them will take damage continuously. As for Asir, it no longer has that weird animation stopping thing at the end where you're kind of stuck there just looking at enemies. Now you can use any of your abilities immediately after. Roll is a 10 times better mobility ability now. What a mouthful. It charges faster and gives you a super jump if you jump using it. And noted, but isn't on the patch notes, if you're mid-air while you're charging Roll and you release Roll, you can jump out of it. So you can use this to avoid fall damage on Chef. And the jump itself is very noticeable. You can traverse areas you usually wouldn't be able to. Another super awesome thing that was added to Chef was any of his oil abilities will spill oil on the ground, like Glaze, for example. And you can use Seer or his alternate secondary, we'll come to that in a second, to ignite or freeze the patches, causing any enemy on them to take the debuff. Yes, Chef also had its cooldown reduced from 15 seconds to 10 seconds, which is a massive improvement. And honestly, you might want to take Yes, Chef now. Now let's talk about his 2 alternate abilities, which are terrific. I love them. First, his alternate secondary Icebox. Woof. They shouldn't have even tried to make Seer better because this one is so much better than Seer. You might as well remove the ability now. Icebox has 2 charges to it initially, and you can use it to shoot out ice cubes, which will apply frost to enemies, which is a new debuff. Upon acquiring 6 stacks of frost, an enemy will then freeze, much like Artificer's Ice Spear or Cryo Charge from Railgunner, which will instantly kill any enemy below 30% HP. This works on Mithrix and the False Sun, and is one of the strongest status effects, if not the actual strongest status effect in Risk of Rain 2. On top of that, if you Yes Chef, you shoot out a giant ice cube that does 1500% damage and instantly freezes enemies. Once again, can be used on Mithrix and False Sun. 1500% damage is more than a fully charged up Nano Spear, and only slightly less damage than Cryo Charge, which is Railgunner's special. And this ice cube has a lot of AoE to it, so you can hit multiple enemies. I'd recommend not eating any of the meat the Chef serves, because he seems to have a lot of Artificer abilities, and I don't think I want to see what's in that freezer of his.
What's in the box?
His alternate utility, Ion Bounce, Oil Spill. You twirl upwards and then slam down, exploding with oil for 200% damage. Launch again by reactivating this before landing and do this up to 4 times total. I know this sounds like a silly ability, and trust me it is, because I'd be bouncing on a crazy style all the time, but it is unironically very good. While you're using this ability, you can't take fall damage. So if you're on Eclipse or something, or you just fell off the map, you just activate Oil Spill and you can take no damage, no matter how suicidal you were before you press the button. On top of that, you can jump up to 4 times, pretty high, while also spreading oil on the ground that can be used with Seer, funny joke, or ice cubes to freeze everything. In other words, you can create an AoE execute. You can also use all of your abilities while you're using Oil Spill, so you can be jumping up and down while also using your cleavers. So this is functionally like having a Hopu Feather all the time, which is a big bonus for Risk of Rain 2, considering a lot of enemies are ground-based, and if you're bouncing up and down, they just can't hit you. The boosted version of this will either spew frozen oil or ignited oil, which isn't really that necessary, but more importantly, Yes Chef can refresh the cooldown of the ability since you get the boosted version, meaning you can use that for extra mobility. I've used that to jump chasms I normally couldn't, or if you just want to continuously bounce on it. The only downside of this ability is it doesn't give you that much movement speed in general, so fighting enemies with this is a lot easier, but you just can't get away from enemies or move about the map faster, and for that reason you might want to pick Roll sometimes if you're fucking lame. Who said that? So would I say Chef is better now? Yeah, I would say so. You no longer have to use a Chef mod to make him playable. He's actually a lot of fun to play now. He's not the best survivor in the game by any means. I mean, you saw the 2 monstrosities that I listed before him, but he is way more fun to play now. And for anyone who plays Eclipse or has been putting off the gold Eclipse badge because Chef just sucks that much, his alternate skills kind of trivialize a lot of Eclipse. Also, one final crazy Chef buff, his Gubu Junior clones are now mechanical, meaning that Void Infestors can infect them and they benefit from spare drone parts. Alright, that's it for most of the survivor changes. There's going to be more videos for that later. Selecting the best loadouts, all the new survivor tier lists, whatever. Let's now talk about the other changes, including the items. For starters, Mithrix and False Sun now acknowledge imposters. Sussy Baka among us. That means when you're playing False Sun, there's some cool voice lines when you fight them. And there's even more if you bring along Aurelionite. And Void Field's got a little bit of a change. Something to do with items, I don't know. But also, the Void Fog damage has been reduced. And the ramp up has been decreased. I haven't played in the Void Fields yet, might never, honestly. So I can't tell you whether or not this change is enough. But also, the Void Fields no longer increment the stage. This was a bug previously mentioned. They fixed it. All right, for items now. Elusive Antlers now will spawn more orbs per stack, going from +1 per stack to +3 per stack, and has had its minimum spawn time for orbs reduced from 5 seconds to 2 seconds. This sounds like an overall buff, but I haven't noticed too much of a difference, so shrug emoji. Bolstering Lantern scaling is now more focused on the item's utility rather than increasing its effective range. It now grants 10% plus 3.5% per stack, attack speed up from a flat 7.5%. That effect is granted per monster or ally in a 20-meter range, up to 3 + 1 per stack. The range no longer scales with additional lanterns. Honestly, I like the gimmicky increases your range every stack. It was terrible to stack that way because the AoE would not get that much larger, but now it truly is attack speed focus crystal. And finally, Unstable Transmitter now grants 60% berry on activation, up from the previous 35%. It also had its internal cooldown change from 45 seconds to 1.1 seconds for those of you that chose to hoard several transmitters at a time. Honestly, did not know about the 45-second cooldown internally, but overall this is just a buff. You probably won't notice it that much. There's a whole bunch of bug fixes that have been added as well, but I'll let you read over that yourself. Anyway, overall, I think this is a great patch. You can catch me streaming on Twitch TV/RD Thursday. Swag Money 69 signing out.